They did some more polling. So, City News Ledger poll shows strong support for Carney-led Liberal Party among Torontonians. Torontonians strongly favor a Liberal government under Mark Carney, according to a City News Ledger poll. That is likely not good news for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, as experts say Toronto ridings will be crucial for any path to victory for both the Liberals and Conservatives in this election. While the national poll shows the race between the Liberals and Conservatives to be dead heat, the poll showed that half of Torontonians said they would cast their vote for the Liberals, while the Conservatives garnered just 31% support, with the NDP further back at 14%. A similar number also believed that Mark Carney led Liberals would be the best party for their city, with the Conservatives actually losing some support to the People's Party of Canada, led by Maxime Bernier. Because Toronto is the largest urban area in the country, the 905, the way that the area swings, if it's predominantly liberal, you get a liberal federal government. If it's predominantly conservative, you get a conservative federal government, says Nelson Wiseman, professor of humanist and political science at the University of Toronto. The perception that the Liberals would be the best party for Toronto remains consistent across all demographic groups, where they were enjoy strong support among women, 52%, and more than 50% of those aged 33 to 54 and 55 plus. The Conservatives' strongest showing is with men, but even there, the gap is 11 points to the Liberals. Carney is the choice of 47% of Torontonians for Prime Minister, and also 2-to-1 gap over Poilievre. The strongest support for the Conservative leader is among men at 35%, and while more than half of women favor Carney, 27% said they still haven't made up their mind. The national poll found that among Canadians, the relationship with the United States and Donald Trump's tariffs is the uppermost importance in their minds, while 4 in 10 see Canada and the Liberals as best equipped to handle that fragile relationship. 6 in 10 Ontarians say Premier Doug Ford is doing enough or more than enough when it comes to managing the province's relationship with the United States. Ford, who recently ran a provincial campaign solely on the promise that he would be the best one to deal with Trump and his consistent terror threat, easily outranked fellow premiers David Eby of BC and Alberta's Daniel Smith in this regard. Alongside Trump's tariffs and Canada's tensions with the United States, experts say there are a few key issues party leaders must keep in mind to win over Toronto voters. Talking about issues like the housing crisis, affordability crisis, the Liberals are taking about doing a high speed rail. These sorts of things could have more of an impact at the local level, said Laurie Turnbull, a political analyst and professor in the facility of management at Dalhousie University. Despite having just gone through a provincial campaign in which 45% of the electorate turned out to cast a ballot, Wiseman doesn't believe that there will be election fatigue when it comes to the federal vote. So, again, they're only running on Trump and the tariff war. And that's the only thing that's keeping the Liberal Party afloat. Because they people are well aware of the housing crisis, the affordability crisis, inflation. They are well aware about the fentanyl crisis. They're well aware about our horrendous open border policy. None of that ever got addressed. Certainly not even now in the campaign. We've heard a lot from Pierre Poilievre before Mark Carney entered the race. That was the hitting point that the Conservatives were using against the Liberals, and they were in the lead for such a long time. But now with this tariff war, and with Donald Trump continued retaliation against the Canadian ones and back and forth tensions, Mark Carney's just using it for his own political power to garner more votes while ignoring all these other crises that are conflicting and causing this problem and making you believe that he's going to be the front runner to combating the problems that him and his party have deliberately created. This again, it shows how crazy this election has become. It shows you how crazy, how much of a circus this is, how much manipulation they're doing to people. And they're hoping that Canadians don't pay attention enough or don't look up to this and don't do their own research and just fall into line and be scared enough to vote for someone like Carney. Because otherwise, you're going to go and support Trump. Even though Trump doesn't support Pierre Poilievre. And that's what's led to stuff like this, which we've shown before when they did this in Ottawa. But they did this in Toronto over the weekend. So Toronto Star, elbows up at Nathan Phillips Square as hundreds turn out in solidarity against Donald Trump. So, again, is this a protest to go after the Liberal Party that's causing the destruction of our economy? Is this a protest to go after the people responsible for the fentanyl crisis? Is this going after the people causing organized crime to burst into this country and taking our federal institutions hostage? No. All this is about the fear-mongering campaign that Donald Trump in America is awful. You guys support me because I'm the strongest one to take that. Even though they have not shown any credibility to be strong enough to go after Trump. They're using this to their own political advantage, hoping you suckers would play into this. So here is an example of this. This is from Reality Docu on X here. This is at City Hall in Toronto where they held a rally, and it was really just it was a nothing burger. It was an empty rally because there was no real retaliation and no real protest on things that really mattered to the protection and sovereignty and the solidarity of Canadians. Other than the fact that they watched TV, they heard that Donald Trump was doing more, and Mark Carney and the rest of the Liberal Party told him to get more angry. So here's what went down here.
Just all of you, but we're Canada, and we're pissed.
My God, you think with all these people and all the Canadian flags, this would be like a Nazi rally. That's what they told the truckers. That's what they told the Freedom Convoy, that they're a bunch of Nazis, and they showed Canada flag when they were gathering together in the bitter cold in Ottawa. They had a bounce house. They were feeding food to people nearby. They were hugging each other. They were laughing. They were dancing. They were being peaceful, being patriotic. Oh no, that was a Nazi rally. This, however, is okay. When you're directing your anger towards someone like Trump and not anger towards us, that's okay to protest. But yet you still get some people, you get some still disillusioned people that will cheer this and still get angry at someone like Tamara Leach. They're still angry at someone like Chris Barber. But they're okay with this. This is okay, apparently. So, even Mayor Olivia Chow, the Toronto mayor, widow of the late Jack Layton of the NDP, takes a selfie on stage, capturing the elbows up rally crowd behind her. So, Olivia Chow is also cashing in on this campaign. Because it's making her look good. It's making her look stronger. I'm going to lead Toronto through this mess of the tariff war. I'm not actually going to hold liberals responsible for anything. I'm not going to hold our politicians responsible for anything, but I'm going to be strong and assertive enough to go after someone like Trump, as she has done devastation to Torontonians. So here's her doing this selfie cringe.
Elbows up, everybody! Let's go! Oh, you know, I am a selfie person. Hang on a second, because there's so many of you here. I'm gonna turn around and take a photo and get this moment. All right, here.
Oh my God. She sounds like the drunk aunt at Thanksgiving. I'm a selfie person. I'm up with the kids. I'm hip. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to grab my phone. You guys are going to smile. And we're going to click the button. Oh, I just turned it off. Hold on. Smile. Stay smiling. Where's the camera button? Again, it's literally amazing that just a few years ago, the same thing that happened in Ottawa, they said was a Nazi rally. It was destructive. It was chaotic. They demonized Canadians. They said how awful it was that people were partaking in the Freedom Convoy. They locked down bank accounts. They froze the assets of the truckers. How awful and disparaging it is to show patriotism during a national emergency. Now it's okay. Now it's okay. Now you get politicians doing selfies. Watch this again. This is just hilarious.
Elbows up, everybody! Let's go! Oh, you know, I am a selfie person. Hang on a second, because there's so many of you here. I'm going to turn around and take a photo and get this moment. All right, here we go. Woohoo! Elbows up!
And what was that going to capture? That people will fall into line? Is it like Simon Says? Elbows up! What's really the point of this? What's really the point of this? So, even they had a bit of a celebrity cameo. So the singers from Bare Naked Ladies showed up to this Elbows Up event in Toronto. The Get-Alongs cover the Bare Naked Ladies hit single, If I Had $1 Million at the Elbows Up. Okay, so it's the cover band, not the Bare Naked Ladies. That would be interesting if you know, a multi-million-dollar band would actually show up in Toronto for a political rally. That would be really interesting. But no, this is the cover band that performed the song If I Had $1 Million at an Elbows Up rally. You know, they should really change that song to make it more Canadian. You know, if I had $1 million, I can then take 750,000 of that towards taxes so they can send overseas to continue on more warfare, and other European nations can spend it on booze and sexcapades. And then I could take what's left, buy a tent for myself, park that into a public spot, become a drug user because I've now lost all my money living in this country, and wonder why this country is failing. I think that would be the more uptake approach to Canadianize the song If I Had $1 Million. Because sadly, $1 million, especially in Toronto, doesn't buy you a lot. $1 million can't even buy you a tool shed in Toronto these days. That's how sad it's gone. That's how sad it's gone. But again, there's no rally call for that. They're not angered towards that. Nobody's holding up signs protesting why it's so expensive to live in Toronto. No, everything's about Trump. Everything. Every single moment of the day. And this guy points out, this Dean Storikoko, I don't know how to pronounce that. Um, says, look at the average age. The average age of the Toronto Elbows Up crowd is almost 70 years of age. And you look at that. Look at that picture. You notice the lack of young people? Just saying. And underneath that, this guy, Kafir Canuck, says the last of the cable TV viewership in Canada. So all the people that watched the news the previous night were told to come to this rally. They were told to come to this rally, do the elbows up thing. That was the most patriotic thing for Canada. Just comply with the news, comply with politicians, but not know why they were protesting. Not know for a second why these tariff wars exist. Not know for a second why they should support the Liberal Party that deliberately caused this problem to begin with. That's why there's not young people at this, because younger people are not watching cable news. They're going on to X, they're going on to TikTok, they're going on to social media that are telling you how stupid this is. They're telling you that the older generation are just complying to the consolidation of corporate media and politicians. That they're not understanding this crisis. They're not understanding that Canada's collapsing, not because of Trump, but because of our own government. And here's even, again, hundreds turned out for the Elbows Up rally in Windsor, Ontario, right across from the Detroit River. Look at that. There's the GM Tower right there, right across from Detroit. There's even someone holding a Ukraine flag. And you notice, again, in that picture, not a lot of younger people, not a lot of, 20, 30-year-olds in that crowd. I thought they were supposed to be the new demographic we're worried about. They don't care. So, here it is. This is the Toronto polling, 50%. Which party would you most likely vote for? The Liberal Party at 50%. And which party would best be for your city? Liberal Party at 50%. So, Toronto, just for people to be aware, just like New York, just like Los Angeles in California, just like the coastal parts of the United States that, are blue no matter who, they're always Democrat, they're always supportive of this. The same thing happens in Ontario, and primarily because of Toronto. Because Toronto is such a large population, because Toronto is home to a lot of the higher up elite class that live along the beaches, they live along certain areas within the, upper districts in Toronto, are rallying for the Liberal Party. Meanwhile, the rest of most of the country is looking elsewhere. They're looking for a change. They're looking more towards Pierre Poilievre. But that never gets addressed because they'll go after a highly densely populated area, and that's the greater outcome that happens within the Canadian election. So Toronto is definitely a huge point to this. That's why I bring attention to this story. Because whatever Toronto leans towards is most likely what's going to happen in the federal election. And just like with Atlantic provinces, just like a lot of the metropolitan Montreal and Quebec, those are huge counterfactors on why the federal election swings in a direction.